I legally died 3 times, yeah.
Retired Army Staff Sergeant Robert Bartlett was deployed in Iraq in 2005 when his Humvee struck a roadside bomb.
It came through right next to my head and cut me in half from the left corner of my temple down through my jaw. Took my gunner's legs off and then took the top of my truck commander's head off and then went out the other side of the vehicle.
Bartlett was bleeding internally with a collapsed lung and third-degree burns on his face and body. He turned to his gunner.
My jaw was hanging down here. I couldn't say anything. I just looked at him and he just looked at me and we just knew we were going to die together. So I just leaned over in his laps and he just threw his arms around me and tried not to die.
But Bartlett did die, first in a local Army hospital, again in Balad, Iraq, and again at Walter Reed Hospital back in the United States. Each time, doctors revived him.
The plastic surgeon built me a bottom lip here because I have no bottom lip anymore. I have a titanium jaw from here to here. So you can see the burn on my face, lost this eye, cut off part of my nose.
The gunner survived too, but Bartlett's truck commander, Staff Sergeant William Brooks, died instantly.
That's a piece of shrapnel right there.
The bomb that struck their Humvee was an explosively formed penetrator, or EFP, specifically tailored to penetrate American armored vehicles. Brad Bowman is a U.S. Army veteran and an expert with the Foundation for Defense of Democracies.
Iran designed these weapons. Iran smuggled these weapons into Iraq. Iran trained the people how to use those. And there are hundreds and hundreds of Americans that were killed and injured because of that.
In 2019, the U.S. designated Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps a foreign terrorist organization. Iran now wants that designation removed, along with the sanctions that go with it, as part of its nuclear negotiations with the West known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA. But the U.S. says that's not on the table. State Department spokesman Ned Price.
We have made very clear that the JCPOA is about one thing and one thing only. It's about Iran's nuclear program. If Iran wants these sanctions lifted, they will need to alter their underlying conduct. They will need to change the dangerous activities that gave rise to these sanctions in the first place.
And here's White House National Security Council spokesman John Kirby speaking to VOA.
If they want to be less isolated from the rest of the world, there's a deal on the table. Take that deal, come back into compliance, the sanctions relief will come, and the region will be safer for it.
But critics of the deal warned the region will not be safer, saying that in the years the nuclear deal was in effect under the Obama administration, Iran actually increased its financial support for militias and terror groups.
It rewarded bad behavior.
How did that make you feel?
Betrayed. Like my country isn't taking care of me or care about what I did or what I sacrificed, or any of what my friends sacrificed or died for.
Bartlett and hundreds of others wrote President Joe Biden earlier this year, urging him not to release any frozen funds to Iran through negotiations until victims of Iranian and Iranian-backed attacks are compensated. So far, they say, the administration has not responded. Carla Babb, VOA News, Washington.
Here we go.
Soaring in an F-16.
All right, here comes Afterburner.
At the top of the world, backseat with the U.S. Air Force. Over America's last frontier, Alaska.
All right.
At times flying faster than the speed of sound.
We are now supersonic.
An F-35, America's newest stealth jet. Beside us, a sea of snow-covered peaks below.
15,000.
The tallest in North America, the majestic Denali nearby.
Beautiful, isn't it?
My pilot, Major Lloyd Wright, call sign Bond, has navigated these skies for the last 7 years.
I've flown a lot of places in the world, and this is like the best airspace in the entire planet. It's absolutely a national treasure.
But American fighter jets aren't here for the views.
The military calls this strategic airspace. We've just arrived at the Arctic Circle, and from here, fighter jets can reach anywhere in the Northern Hemisphere in a single flight.
Colonel David Birkland is the base commander.
And it's hard to understand that looking at a normal map that stretches Alaska out over the top of the map. But when you look at a globe, it becomes very apparent how close we are to really anything in the Northern Hemisphere.
Europe is just across the Arctic Ocean. Mainland Alaska is less than 100 kilometers from Russia, and Asia just across the Pacific.
We're closer to the Indo-Pacific than they are sitting in Hawaii.
With growing fears of Chinese and North Korean attacks. A few years ago, the Defense Department was looking to close most of Eielson. Seamus Daniels, with the Center for Strategic and International Studies, explains.
DoD argued that the cost to operate and maintain Eielson was expensive due to the environment and the climate in Alaska, and ultimately they proposed a major realignment.
Airspace larger than Florida, right here in Alaska, right behind me. And all of that was on the chopping block.
Alaska Senator Dan Sullivan tells VOA the people of Fairbanks, the city closest to Eielson, pushed back. So did an independent commission set up to evaluate the Pentagon's proposed base changes.
I believe the Pentagon has done it with the air station.
Again, Seamus Daniels with CSIS.
The commission rejected DoD's recommendation because they found that it wouldn't actually generate the original savings expected. The commission also argued that Eielson was important as an airbase because it has great air ranges and extensive complexes.
After downsizing Eielson failed to take off, the Air Force did a 180, ordering its training squadron of F-16s to stay put, while deciding in 2016 to add not one, but 2 new squadrons of F-35s. 6 years and 54 F-35s later, Eielson is a combat-ready base equipped to fight at a moment's notice. The jets are worth about $5 billion. And my pilot, Bond, tells me the Pentagon has spent an additional $600 million building more runways, more hangars, more fuel tanks, more upgrades to accommodate the new jets and new people.
Case in point, it's always busy here. There's only ever about 20 minutes where there's not airplanes flying around right here.
The last 2 jets landed here in April, just in time, Sullivan says, to deter Russia's power plays.
They've been doing Bear bomber missions. We've had to scramble more F-22s to go intercept those bombers, probably more than any other time since the mid-1980s. So they're aggressive here too, and the only thing that Putin understands, the only thing, in my view, that Xi Jinping understands in this new era of authoritarian aggression is power.
The new F-35s at Eielson, combined with the F-22s at a base in the state capital, give Alaska more than 100 combat-ready 5th-generation fighters. That's more stealth air power than anywhere else on the globe. Carla Babb, VOA News, Eielson Air Force Base, Alaska.
VOA Pentagon correspondent Carla Babb is traveling with U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, who is attending the NATO meeting in Brussels. I asked her about what NATO officials are seeing on the ground.
Well, they're saying that they would like diplomacy to rule the day. They want Russia to back down, but in order for Russia to back down, they have to do the actions. They have to move their troops. And Jens Stoltenberg said that at this point, they've seen no de-escalation on the ground. In fact, troop numbers have increased and Russia is bringing in more troops, he said today. And so the NATO alliance, they have to be focused on being prepared for this invasion, should it happen or not. And so they are going through and trying to beef up their defenses along the eastern flank. And you've seen that happen bit by bit. You've seen the U.S. bring in forces. They've brought in about 5,000 additional troops into Poland. 1,000 were moved into Romania. You've seen the U.K. bring in troops on the eastern flank. You've seen Germany bring in troops on the eastern flank. You've also seen the Netherlands bring in F-35 fighter jets should they be needed to patrol the skies, because if there's an invasion, then the eastern flank of NATO is going to be much more vulnerable, and they're going to need to defend their territorial integrity.
Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba met with officials in Washington, and joining us live from the Pentagon is VOA's Pentagon correspondent, Carla Babb. Carla, I want to begin our conversation here with Minister Kuleba there at the Pentagon. His schedule was kind of altered a little bit from what was originally posted, but what can you tell us about his meeting there?
So his meeting was very important because while we've been hearing from NATO and the United States about how the NATO alliance is unified, Ukraine has a much different perspective in all of this. You know, he came here to Washington and he told Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, I'm here on a diplomatic mission, but these days diplomacy also means defense. And he was very clear that President Vladimir Putin's speech, Russian President Vladimir Putin's speech yesterday, was not about the recognition of Donetsk and Luhansk. It was about the destruction of the Ukrainian state. That's what he said, the destruction of the Ukrainian state. So very, very somber mood, very serious mood at the Pentagon today. And as you heard later, the president making those additional announcements of troop deployments to the eastern flank to further support NATO as everything continues to escalate in Ukraine.
Carla, we have about a minute left. And one of the things that President Biden spoke about at the White House was some shifting of U.S. troops in Europe. Can you explain what we know about that development?
That's right. VOA was actually the first to report specifically that these troop deployments would include a battalion from Italy. That's about 800 to 1,000 U.S. troops going to the Baltic region from Italy. Also, 8 F-35 strike fighters are going to be moving from Germany to the Baltics. We've got about 20 Apache helicopters. Those are attack helicopters going from Germany to the Baltics. And even 12 Apache helicopters are going to be moving from Greece to Poland. And these moves are being done, the White House and the Pentagon say, to deter further aggression into NATO, to reassure NATO allies. And they are, you know, we've been hearing these announcements more and more. So I imagine that if things get worse in Ukraine, we may see even more announcements in the coming days.
For more context on Patriot missiles, let's bring VOA's correspondent Carla Babb into the conversation.
Patriot missiles are able to shoot down weapons that are coming in to your territory. They're actually an incredible defense system that has been used all across the globe. Most recently, I know that we've seen Saudi Arabia and Iraq have these missiles in place to shoot down potential attacks from Iran. We've seen them all across Europe as well. Slovakia has Patriots. Germany has Patriots. Greece has Patriots. So they're very effective. And the key here is Patriots can shoot down ballistic missiles. That's been a concern for the Ukrainian people because as Russia uses ballistic missiles, they've got a series of weapons for their air defense so far, but none that have really been able to target ballistic missiles the way that Patriots will be able to do.
So what might have changed? Why does it look like the Pentagon will be giving Ukraine the Patriots now instead of months ago when they were first asked for?
I'm not exactly sure on what's taken so long, but I suspect it's because the Patriots, unlike some of the other equipment that have been provided, they take a really long time to train Ukrainians to use these systems. This is not a system that a Ukrainian will be ready to use in just 1 or 2 months. It's going to take at least 6 months of training likely to get the Ukrainians up to speed to use something like a Patriot. And then on the flip side of that, I was speaking to another analyst from the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, retired Admiral Mark Montgomery, and he was pointing out that these are incredibly expensive systems to use already, about $3 to $4 million a piece per round that comes out of the Patriot. And so when you take that expense on top of the expense of the long training and the fact that the people that they're going to be training, those operators would have to be taken away from systems to start training on the Patriots. So that is my best understanding as to why there has been a delay thus far from this building getting these Patriot batteries to Ukraine.
So if it takes approximately 6 months to get soldiers trained up to use the Patriot missiles, is that an indication from the Pentagon that they see this conflict going on a lot longer?
Well, the Pentagon has been clear that they do see this conflict lasting a long time, but they say that's because Ukraine doesn't want to give up. And as long as Ukraine wants to continue this fight, the U.S. and NATO allies have said that they are going to support them for as long as it takes. And so while we have no idea how long it's going to take, General Ben Hodges, retired General Ben Hodges, the former commander of U.S. Army Europe, has made a bold prediction to Voice of America. He says that if the United States and NATO keep supplying Ukraine with the weapons that they've been supplying them, he believes that the Ukrainians will be able to take Crimea and retake Crimea from the Russians by August, and also make significant gains in the Donbas area as well.
A bold prediction indeed. Carla Babb is VOA's Pentagon correspondent. Carla, thanks for your time and for your analysis this morning.